Hi, this is Brad from TrueFire, and I just wrapped up an interview with Matt, digging in with Matt. We dug deep too. It was awesome. But what Matt is doing is awesome because he's celebrating and educating entrepreneurship, sharing ideas with his audience. And any one of those ideas could spark an important and significant change in your life. So, from my perspective, go dig in with Matt Rosenthal. And I hope you enjoyed the show we just did.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Digging In with Matt Rosenthal. Got an amazing guest for you guys today. Really interesting to me, first and foremost, selfishly, because I'm a huge fan of music. And this gentleman has done something really amazing with music. He's going to tell you about that. But, you know, a couple words that I think describe him best to me. First and foremost, he's a creator. He's certainly an entrepreneur. He's created an amazing system that reaches 3 million players, guitar players globally. All right. That is just huge. And he's a wonderful guy. And you're going to get to see that. And you're going to get to hear an amazing story. He has a journey that's just so inspiring and so motivational. So I want to welcome today Brad Wendkos to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. Thank you. What a nice, kind, worded intro.
Show's over. Nice talking to you.
I hope I can pay that off halfway at least, you know?
Listen, we spent a lot of time talking before I hit the record button. And in that short period, I just got such a good feeling from you, you know, and I can feel the creativity even when you're talking. It comes through, you know, digitally. Likewise. It comes through.
Yes. Thank you, man.
So we know that that you've done some amazing things in your life, and you've created something that's, to me, it's having an impact, right? And so if we ask ourselves, why are we even here, aside from making sure that we're happy and we're fulfilled, if we can impact other people, like what else is, I mean, that's great. You're impacting 3 million people one way or the other around the world, and you're not even done yet. Before we get into that, take me back to the beginning and just tell everybody who you are, where your passion came from, and how this all started.
Sure. You know, I need to go way back. So my parents were Bohemian artists. I was born in Miami, but we moved, immediately to Italy, where my father studied, at the Florence Institute of Art. So he did portraits for a living, but painted, whatever he wanted to for passion. My mother, also Bohemian, was a sculptress and a writer and a musician. My father, he played 7 instruments, including guitar. He was into jazz. And so, it's interesting because, we didn't have a lot of money, but I never felt poor, right? There's a lot of love and inspiration and art in the house. And I know that sort of, had a big impact on me, right? So I started thinking, my father passed when I was 12, pretty traumatic, and my mother was quite young at the time. She had me when she was 20. And
what did your father pass on from?
A heart attack.
And he was in his 40s?
He was 42.
I just want to tell you something. I have to interrupt you here.
Sure.
We have a shared experience. My father was 42 when he died, and I was 12.
No.
Yeah. They can't make that. That is an eerie coincidence. I had to stop you.
Okay, well, that's good. And
I
don't know if this is interesting, but it was impactful for me because at 12 years old, you don't have. I didn't realize how much I missed my father until I had my own kids, right? I didn't know what it was really like because you don't know that at 12 years old, really.
Yeah.
And then, my mother had to, he had the heart attack, didn't have the proper insurance. And at this point in his career, he had a portrait studio in the Fontainebleau Hotel, which is Miami Beach.
Oh, in Miami. That's so cool.
He then had the big art gallery upstairs, very successful, both of these things. This was in the day when his portrait studio was right next to the lounge or the club, where they would do shows. The Frank Sinatras and the Dean Martins and, some of the Sammy Davis Jr. and some of the best musicians in the world, right? And he would have them come over and, there'd be jam sessions at night. And of course.
Wait. You're saying he knew them and they came to your house?
He knew the musicians in the band.
Oh, okay.
Those guys.
Still pretty cool.
Very, very cool. And but anyway, he had, worked his way up. He was actually had opened a second gallery in Fort Lauderdale, right? And on the night of the opening, he had his heart attack. He was at the pinnacle of his career, let's say, and if you measure that by money, okay? But ultimately, it killed him, and that had a big impact on me, right? Which didn't really kick in until I was 48. We'll get there. So meanwhile, I thought I would go, I started playing guitar at a very early age, but I thought I was supposed to be an artist and honor and follow my father's footsteps, right? And, even as a teenager, I'd be doing illustrations for the alternative newspapers, and Salvador Dali was my hero. And I wound up going to Pratt in Brooklyn, but dropped out the moment I had an opportunity to go on the road as a musician, right? So that was my passion, right? So, you go on the road, every guitar player's a music learner. And I used to read Guitar Player magazine all of the time, but I was frustrated. You said, you don't read music. Well, none of us really read music, just a very few, right? So, but you read these magazines with notation and tab, and it's in print. You can't even really read the standard notation, and the tab doesn't give you what is it supposed to sound like when played properly? So this had been in my head forever, right? Meanwhile, I quit the road at 27 or 28. I literally sold all my guitars, all my gear, which if I held on to it, would be worth a fortune today, because what I thought was going to be my life, the grass is, you don't know what you're going to get till you get it, right? And this has been a theme throughout my entire life. So now, if you grow up, let's say, on the wrong side of the tracks in a place like Miami Beach, I lived there. Prior to that, we moved from Italy to New York. My father had a studio there. Then he moved us to Miami Beach. I was there sixth grade through 11th grade. And there are, very rich kids, you all go to the same school, and kids that, at 14 years old have a fancy car, that they only have a learner's permit, they have a Donzi or a Boston Whaler, and man, I wanted those things, wanted a boat, I was materialistic, and, I think like most people, you equate, success with money, because money buys you everything you think, right? So in 81, I started I have my first company was like a creative graphic agency, which I wound up selling, for, whatever, $20 or whatever that was. And then I got into interactive technologies, right? And I remember searching for, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What's going to do it? And I remember what it was like in the early 80s, it was a lot of new tech coming on the scene, computers, the Mac, the whatever. And, I really thought, I really thought it through. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to become successful? How am I going to own boats and travel wherever? So I stumbled across this interactive. It was IVR technology at the very beginning, and AT&T could not, because of the divestiture, they could not get involved in information services. So they had to work with third parties. I'm at this point in a 400 square foot little bit of space in Hackensack, New Jersey, which is like, at that time anyway. Well, I'm not going to diss Hackensack because but so I went out to California. What
year was this? What?
This is like 81.
Okay, so you're in 81. You're in Hackensack, New Jersey, right next to Giant Stadium.
Up with this business idea.
Right.
Okay. I buy a black box of technology. I learn how to code it. I love gadgets and gizmos. I'm not a coder today, I'll tell you that. Okay. But back then you would learn the simple commands. And what this black box did is you could record information, any audio recording, organize it, and allow people to call that box, punch in a 3-digit code, and hear a message, and pause it or rewind it, and like, man, this is unbelievable. And so, for me, it was, okay, what are the marketing applications? It's like, oh, you can go to companies, right? And their spokesperson can deliver a message, or their customer service the right way, and it'll be heard that way, and it'll divert traffic away from operators. And, and look at, it was 3 years, no sales. It was just me in this now a little bit larger office, because I had a couple of these boxes. And, the truth of the matter was that, nobody got this. And, you can be way too early. The trick is 5 minutes early, because all the things that I tried to sell, I remember, like, one of the things I tried to sell to realtors, phone a home, right? I mean, they literally, I created all these brochures. I sent them out to, 200 realtors in the New York, in the tri-state area. And I remember ordering a second telephone line because I was going to get hammered with calls. I swear to you, and I'm not exaggerating, I got one call from some realtor who said, yeah, I got your phone a home brochure. That's kind of, I have an old answering machine here. Or would you be interested in buying it? So that did not fly. That was, a fail. But we all know that, success is failing until you finally hit on it. Then all the while I am, there's no family money. I had no notion of how to raise money. I'm a musician, right? So I started applying for credit cards, and I amassed what is the equivalent of maybe $80,000 worth of credit line across a half a dozen cards. And back in those days, they weren't, today, if you apply, they know exactly what else you have. I was able to get these 6 cards, and I, would use the credit line from one to pay the minimum on the other. And somehow or another, that lasted me these 3 years. And I was going to, my business was like, I had 3 months left, and then I couldn't even pay, my low rent, right? And at this time now, I had been pitching Fortune 500 companies and their agencies, right? And like a, it was like kismet, like a gift from karmic, I don't know what it was, but I get a call from Ogalvee and Mather Direct, and they say, hey, we've gotten some of your literature, actually, it was cassette tapes and these, kind of cool mailers. We would send out a box that said, ring, ring, ring. You open up the box, there's a red phone handset, the old type. It's for you. You'd pick that phone up and you'd have my little phone, or the company name started PhoneWorks, welcome to the PhoneWorks zone, kind of a Twilight Zone thing. Anyway, I get this call. This is in, I remember it like it was September, where I knew I couldn't make it through the end of the year. Okay, I'm freaking out. All my friends and peers that had completed their education, they're fancy lawyers, driving fancy cars. At this time, I have 2 kids, right? And that puts a real pressure on you.
Sure.
Now you got to grow up and you got to provide. So Ogalvee made their calls and said, "Hey, I hear you got this phone thing, 800 thing, and so on and so forth." Said, to call you. And so we had a little rap about that. And they said, this sounds cool. Art, why don't you come in and tell us more about it? We'll bring the client in, right? So I go to Ogalvee and Mather Direct. This is the first time I've been in a big agency, like literally the first time, right? I'm driving a rent-a-wreck at this time, I can't even afford the parking at this time. So Ogalvee, this is on Park Avenue, right? Go into their building, and receptionist, call somebody, and that somebody brings me upstairs all the way at the top and opens these doors. It's like this massive boardroom, like right out of the movies, man.
Yeah.
And there are 20 people seated around this table. There's the creative director, this director, and the client is AT&T. Right?
Wow.
AT&T. And I knew about the divestiture thing, right? And so, I don't know what to expect, but somebody says, "Well, Brad, tell us what you could do for us," and it's like, what? And so anyway, I described the technology and how it works and the fun we can have with it, because besides information dissemination, right, there's also a lot of promotional things that you can do, right? So, I give them that presentation, and then the client says, we're trying to come up with, they had just introduced, do you remember, they had, I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like a credit card, that you hear a bong and you enter in this phone card, not a phone card, but this card, right, into their system, right? And you can call anywhere and you get billed. And it was very like new. And they said the phone, so I knew about this product. They said, "Well, what do you think we can do promotion wise?" I had no idea. So I just riffed. Okay. It was like jazz, right? I said, "Well, I have that card, and I know that a lot of people are confused by it. And I know that no one knows what to do when they hear the bong, right, which was the signal to enter your AT&T card number, and then you can dial in the number that you want to call and connect and all that." And so I said, "What if we do a promotion, right, where people enter in their card number? You know who those people are, because those card numbers are registered with you. And we do 2 things. We have a fun promotion, but we teach them how to use the card at the same time. So to enter the sweepstakes, we'll step you through the process. You'll recognize the tone, blah, blah, blah." Sold, right? 1 month later, right? And I gave them pricing, but I had no idea, it was like a price per call kind of a thing, right? They called me the next month. Now that was October. Now we're in November. And they say, "Brad, listen, the client wants us to ask if you could do us a favor. We've calculated what this is going to cost, $1.2 million. Okay. They took my numbers and they said, "But the client wants to pay you 75% of that before the end of the year, even though this campaign was going to happen till the middle of the next year. And the reason they wanted to do that is to preserve their budget, right? So whatever they spent in this year, they could get at least that or more, right?" I mean, can you imagine? I mean, think, I'm in this lonely place for 3 years. I'm like, it's like Papillon in the cell in solitary. And they're saying they want to send me a check for 75% of $1.2 million, which I said, well, sure,
If you insist.
I got the check,
Wow.
paid off the boxes because the the people that were selling me the boxes were, kind of believed in my mission, and it helped them, show other applications. And bought my wife, Minko, the house of her dreams, a Tudor, and a new Jeep Cherokee, right?
You guys, I'm just curious about. I'm gonna ask you to pause and then, so I can ask you about 4 questions that came up. I didn't want to interrupt you, man.
Sorry, I told you I ramble, man.
No, this is so good. This story is really already, but you skipped over a couple of things, and I think it's important for the people that are whether
Sure.
somebody watching it like today or 10 years from now.
Yeah.
You like, unless I had this wrong, you lived on a houseboat. You lived.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry, I skipped over a lot of.
I mean, you did not. When you say you. Let me take you through. Maybe we can share an experience here. When I grew up, and when the similar thing happened to me, we were living off the government because there was no insurance. We got the Social Security checks, that 3 of them that came in, my mother, my brother, and me. We lived in a little apartment. We had nothing whatsoever. And so I can relate to all of your story, but I know that every step of the way, there were things that I'm hearing you talk about. And I think we're skipping over them a little bit. First of all, when your dad died at 12, it sounds like it demanded that you become creative. And I don't mean creative artistically. I mean creative, like, I gotta make something happen here. Like, maybe you didn't think about it, but it had to happen.
Listen, at 12 years old, I had 2 younger sisters. I had, my mom was working 3 jobs to, and really, you suddenly feel like you're the man of the house, and now you're responsible. And
it's a heavy weight.
And it's just too heavy a weight. You're not equipped to do that at 12 years old, but you feel the responsibility to do that. And, that was a really kind of stressful time for me. And I couldn't really think about the things, honestly, that, I wanted to do or dreamed about doing. It was like, hey, we got to survive here. I gotta cook the Franken for my girls. My sisters. That's really what it was. And I know that I could only do so much. I was really disappointed because I couldn't be the man of the house, right? So when several years later, I was in 11th grade. I don't know what age that makes me. My mom met someone else, married him, not an artist type. And I know she made that decision to get, like, it wasn't like a true love. She and my dad were, madly in love, right? But this gentleman, loved my mom, asked her to marry him. She said yes. And moved, my mom had a lot of baggage, 3 kids, 2 dogs, a cat, a lot of debt. He moves us all to New York, right? And my mom starts working as the creative director for his theatrical makeup business in New York City, where all the models and actresses and actors go to get their stuff, right?
So financially, you guys' life changed pretty quickly. The stress, the tension, the not having.
Well, the stress for me, man, it was like, holy mackerel, this is
right.
Mom, are you sure about yes, this, but that was, the summer, right? I was in 11th grade.
So you were
16. And that summer, I no longer had those responsibilities. I was like free, right? So I just, took my freedom. I hitchhiked to Vancouver, British Columbia.
Right.
lived that summer on the beaches off of, built Indian like long houses out of driftwood, picked berries and roots and mussels and clams. And man, that was just a sensational summer. And then I decided I had to go back to New York and finish high school, right? Which I went to the school called Quintano's School for Young Professionals, which is, if you were an artist or an actor or and you would only have to take certain courses in the morning so that you could go and do your training. I would go to the Art Students League, School of Visual Arts, things like that.
Can I ask you to pause for a sec?
Oh, sure.
Did you, when you were, and I'm not going to go back to this. This is the last question I have about that point in your life. Did you process that death at that point in your life, or did you go right into that survival mode you talked about, and then it came back to you later in life? The processing of what happened.
Yeah, I did not process it. I packed it away. It was always there. I didn't process it till I had my own kids, a much later date, like what happened, what I missed.
You carried it for decades.
Oh my God, I carry it to this day, man, and,
when I say carry, like you carried it, like you didn't really deal. You went and and attacked the world, so to speak. Like you just went and you just made things happen.
That's right.
And you kind of went on your journey, right? You ran towards, like, you didn't have money. You didn't have, you mentioned earlier that you wanted things, you wanted stuff, right? Because at that age, like, that's all we know. We want stuff. Yeah. So you went on you went after it, and you didn't have time to process it.
Absolutely not. And anything I could do to distract myself from processing it, I did. And, so I never went back home after that summer. I started living on my own. So my younger sisters, they were now in a financially stable thing, and I was happy for them, and I was happy for my mother, and I was happy for that. And I was happy that I was free to manifest my own destiny, and that's when, for me, it was about that period of time, playing guitar, going on the road, not as a rock star, just like, for me, my dream, and literally the first thing, that I can remember setting my mind to do something and not quitting in the middle of it was I wanted to be a professional musician. I didn't want to be, of course, if I became a rock star, that'd be cool, but that wasn't my motivation. It
wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
That was like, and
you were that good at guitar at that young age?
No, I've never been that good at guitar. I practiced like an animal. Okay. I drove a taxi cab in New York City, right? I'd jam at night. I'd go out to auditions. If I had $1 for every audition that I got rejected, like in less than a minute, I finally figured out like what I had to practice to be able to get into a band, which was basically, the bands I got into were, some alternative things. And we played CBGBs. We played it with, people like Blondie and the Ramones and, that New York thing. Each band, I remember the night we all played, $17 the band made. Because
I just missed that time. You and I talked about a little bit of a difference in age. I just missed it.
But you don't make money doing that. So I started to figure out, man, what I got to do is learn songs. I have to be a side man in a touring band, and finally got hired as that, and it was a dream gig. It was exactly what I was looking for. Like, we would play the Puerto Rico Hilton. We'd gig for a week in a town. We'd be in the winter in Puerto Rico in the south, and in summer we'd be up in the north. I would get my own room. I'd get bored. I'd earn a little extra for arranging a piece, and I thought that boom, this is a dream come true.
I made it.
Until you live it, right? and you realize that it's a tough road to hoe. It's tough. And, and that's why I quit at 28 and sold everything. So that kind of fills
that filled in the gap, because, there's some things I jotted down. I mean, I'm hearing there's so much persistence and like, you don't give up, and I'm picking that up, and you haven't said it like that, but it's I'm kind of cheating here because we had such a similar experience. Even though our lives are totally different, we had a very similar driving traumatic life experience. So the questions I'm asking you because I felt the same thing. So I'm almost curious, like, did you have, and you're saying yes, yes, yes. So we had the same trauma, the same difficulty, and it did the same thing to both of us. I had no idea, by the way, but before you brought it up.
I think we're brothers from another mother.
Brothers from another mother.
It's kind of crazy, kind of crazy.
The persistence, that I'm hearing, the resilience. I mean, that's something that before we start getting into the next phase, where you start talking about some more business stuff, there's things that I wanted everybody to hear, and I'm glad that you were able to express them. These life events are not common, and I'm sure you would agree, we wouldn't wish a lot of this on people.
Hell no.
And sounds like we've both done in our own life as adults the best we can to provide different levels of stability and consistency and love to our children that maybe the opportunity wasn't there because our lives were different as kids. So there's that whole path, but a lot of people, I'm making up a number, 95% of the people out there are they have a sort of typical path, and they can't relate to what you and I are talking about. But the people that I meet that tend to be the most, and I'm talking in business, successful entrepreneurs, there are patterns: hard work, grit, determination, perseverance, resilience. Go down the list of words, and oftentimes the stories that I hear are similar to yours, similar to mine, and they had to survive through difficult times, years, decades, because of some difficulty as a child. There is a commonality there, not in every case, but it's a lot of the interviews I do.
Absolutely. And they say that you are who you were at 12 years old, essentially, right? Yeah. And you remember what we were when we were 12 years old. We had to try to be the man of the house. We had to try to be, we couldn't go out and, gallivant around town. You stay home and babysit your sisters because your mom's working at night, can't afford a baby. That is like, man,
there's also the feeling that okay, what do I do now? And it's not like I had a very, like, I can think back to being like very, in a way, lost, confused. There's like, whoa, what the heck just happened and what's happening now? And so either you decide to, all right, I'm going to let life beat me up, or I'm just going to go make it happen. And it's a for me, it was a decision. Like I'm like, all right, this is what it is now, and I'm just going to go make it happen. And I remember thinking that when I was not 12, but around 14 years old. I got tired of having nothing.
That's right.
If I wanted a stereo system, I had to work and save up to buy a Radio Shack, one speaker at a time, the receiver, the double cassette deck, one piece at a time over the course of like a year and a half. Yeah. So why I'm not sharing this so that you and I can say how tough lives were, but there's things that I find that I have a difficult time teaching people, even in my own business or when I'm trying to bring people on. There is something that some people just have because of the life circumstances that you've lived. Well, and that can't be taught. That's life.
I think that's true. Like when I try to, you read about, the vast majority of startup businesses fail, and of course when I started to become a businessman or entrepreneur, which I couldn't even spell at that time or understand what it was, or what I was getting into.
Spell it now.
When I'm talking to other people who are starting up and I'm trying to, share, some thoughts with them, I tell them, look at, it's like a marathon, right? Your body gives up at 21 miles, right? And it's your heart, soul, perseverance, tenacity that gets you the rest of the way. Tenacity. And that's the difference, I think, between companies that fail and companies that succeed, right?
100%. We could stop the show right here, which I'm not going to do. And that's gold right there. Those words you just said and what you just said, anybody can have an idea and try to start a business. But the things you just said are the things that you got to put the time in. I've been doing my thing for 20 years. It takes, it's you fail, you get up, you dust yourself off, you keep going. And like, how many times have you thought of quitting? Just want to give up, like, I'm tired of this. When you were starting.
I have too big of an ego to do that. I think, I don't know what it is, but there's something about quitting that, I can't consider. I can consider if you accomplish what you set out to accomplish and you're not happy, it's not what you thought it was going to be, then you change up and you try something else.
That's right. I'm glad you said you can't conceive of it, because that's what I was hoping. I can relate to that. You don't think about quitting. We didn't have the option to quit. You have to keep going. If you quit, then what? Nobody's going to hand you anything. You have to keep going. Well, and that's what people forget in business.
That's right. And, you have to hold yourself accountable to that. And let me tell you what, man, there's been periods in my life where I learned what a panic attack was, what anxiety is, right? And you have to push yourself. There's the wall, you have to push yourself through that because there is no option,
I want to come back to that. I want to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm going to put that on a shelf for a second.
Make a note on that, man.
Because that's really important, because we can connect on that. We have both. It sounds like we both had experiences. All right. So you were 20, I think you said 28.
Yeah, I was 28.
Now bring me from there to now.
Okay. I'll try to not be so verbose. Okay. So 28, the first thing I did was start leverage my art skills, did paste ups and mechanicals, started my own little business, doing whatever I could and at night I'd go work at a shop. These are back in the days where you literally had to do paste ups and mechanicals. It was not digital, right? So I'd do my own thing during the day, not making a lot of money. So I'd go and work at night till like 4 a.m, doing, department store ads and the negatives and, polishing paste ups. So this was not a satisfying thing, but it was a great stepping stone into the world of business. I started to understand how important it is to be able to sell. Selling, it's everything, right? Customer relationships. At this point, I still didn't have any employees. We're going to talk about that in a second. But there was another more mature and more experienced graphic studio that I became friendly with, and she'd give me some overflow work or whatever. And probably within a couple of years, something like that, I amassed a nice clientele. So I told her,
you're still living off of that $1 million?
No, this was before.
I had a time back. That didn't happen yet. Yeah. My mistake.
The first business. So I did a deal with her. I forget the exact numbers, but I said, look, I'm going to turn over all my clients. Okay. And it was likely, something like, look, get these clients. If they're good to you, you give me something for it. That's why I joked about $20 and she did, but it certainly wasn't a lot of money. Okay. So now we're back to the black box of technology, figuring out how to become rich and successful and, then those 3 years living off of credit lines. And then, that black September when I knew I was going to run, and AT&T calls. Now, after AT&T called and I did that deal, before the end of the year, I got 2 other big deals. Just came in from, you're out there mailing, and the next deal was with Guinness to do a promotion using this interactive technology. And then Beatrice Butterball Turkey called me up and wanted me to design a system to divert. I'll never forget this, man. They told me on that call, they said, Brad, we got customer service, we have the turkey talk line, we have a couple of hundred operators, but there are some very common questions. I said, well, that's what we can do. We can provide the answers to those common questions. Tell me a couple of, well, she goes on to say, last year, we had 1,355 people call up to ask us or tell us or complain about their butterball turkey tasting like plastic, right? I said, like plastic? Yeah, and this is because they did not remove the plastic wrap from the turkey, and they would cook it, okay?
Put it in the oven with the plastic on it.
1,355 people that year, but
common sense ain't so common.
No, so man, you have no idea. So we did the turkey talk line and talked about how to thaw, how to cook, how to prepare. Just 3 or 4, which was almost 40% of their traffic. So they saved a ton of dough, and and I made some money. Guinness was straight out promotion. January of that year, I got a deal with NASCAR through Gillette, and we did something called the Gillette Halfway Challenge. If you enter your phone number, and if we call you at the halfway point of one of these, Daytona 500s, and you can tell us which driver is in the lead at that point, we give you a Corvette, right? So anyway, 17 years go by with this business, okay? It becomes very successful. We became literally the first interactive media agency. It was IVR, way before the internet. We did 1,700 campaigns for 300 Fortune 500 brands.
You built this out.
Huh?
You built this out. This company, you built that from scratch. I mean, it was you, then you began to hire employees.
From that little 400 square foot thing,
okay,
I wound up having the entire building. Right?
Where did you get the knowledge? Sales, marketing, accounting. I did the same thing. I didn't build something as big as what you built, but you built something from scratch.
I would ask questions. I'd go find somebody. I needed to learn how to do cash in, cash out. Right. I had a friend who was a CFO of L'Oreal, which is a $1 billion company. And he loved what I was doing and was, I think, jealous that he was stuck in a corporate thing.
Right.
Of course, I said, well, come and join me. He said, well, he's making $600,000 a year plus all the benefits. So he taught me how to do a spreadsheet and a cash in, cash out. And that led to learning how to do a P&L and, other financial things. But I would just go out. And I was very lucky because these were Fortune 500 companies, the marketing people, the heads of marketing who would handle this kind of new thing, the brightest marketing people on the planet, they know their shit. Sorry, didn't mean to curse. But also the agency.
No, we were way overdue. We needed a couple of, feel free, drop it, whatever you want.
So I learned so much from the creative director of Ogalvee and Mather. He was a copywriting genius. He taught me this. I learned from the marketing folks at Coke, and
you sucked it all up.
Like you to learn
all of it.
Right, the principles of promotion and the principles of marketing, and I'm certainly no expert then or expert today, but that's how I learned that's how I grew that business, is asking questions and trying to apply whatever I could take away from the answers.